And I hope everyone is aware that we are no longer in a war on terrorism, but in a war of independence. Everyone must understand that it is a strategy for the imperialists to impose this war on us. Normally, every leader, every ruler should fight for their country. It's a strategy. They fight for their interests, and we must also fight for our interests. If we manage to develop, to prosper, it means that over there, they will not be able to develop. They will have to regress. If we manage to transform our raw materials tomorrow, it means that over there, factories will close. Do you understand the logic? So it's normal that they fight to disrupt our society, to keep it in this constant war, so that we can never think about developing one day.
OK, let me ask you a question, Mr. President, on behalf of all of our viewers who would be covered by this. Why should somebody who maybe had an ancestor 7 or 8 generations ago, long before they were a twinkle in their great-great-great-great-grandparents' eye, why should they have to pay now for what an ancient ancestor did? Or why should they apologise for what an ancestor did centuries ago? Why do they still carry that burden?
Oh, it's not a burden at all. You are one of the beneficiaries of that slave trade. So this is not a burden. You should be concerned, and you should pay, because you today are still benefiting from the greatest indignity to a human being, and that is the slave trade. And not only did you benefit during the slave trade and your country developed, but look at what it caused the developing world. During slavery, resources was used to build your country, build up your capacity. You were able to then become competitive. You were able to invest in mechanization, and developing countries like ours were left behind. So you should be very concerned, because you are a prime beneficiary of the exploits of slavery.
So put a figure on it, please, because it always comes down to the bottom line. How much should an individual taxpayer in a country like the UK be signing a cheque to a country like yours, Ghana?
Well, it's easy to calculate. We can use the time value of money. You can look at the period of slavery and the contribution not the contribution, the extraction of wealth from countries like ours, and how it was utilized to build your society, build your country, create wealth in your country, and then add the time value of money, and you will get the value. There's a lot of research paper on this. A lot of universities would have done paper on this. There's enough literature to tell us what that value is. But I want to say that it is not only the value, it is the loss of time. It is a loss of competitiveness. It is a loss of human dignity. It is a loss of our education system. It is the culture that we lost. It is all of this indignity that surrounded slavery that we must consider.
I just wonder, people will be wondering what, you explained that there are calculations, but are you able to say in what measure that would be? I mean, are we talking billions, millions? What would you expect the payout to be, and over what period of time? Well,
this year in Guyana, we commemorate the 200th anniversary of the Demerara Rebellion. And it took 200 years to get an apology from one of the families. I don't believe that you would want us to wait 200 years for reparative justice and for us to take this conversation forward. CARICOM would have set out a 10-point plan on what should constitute reparative justice and what should constitute reparation. And the calculation goes into billions for the region.
How far back, though, do we have to go on this? Because you make the point, we're talking exclusively here about Western imperialistic slavery, to summarise it. But almost every civilization on the planet owes its existence and its prosperity almost always to crimes in the past, be they aggressive wars, be they different forms of slavery involving different movements of population. You can go right back to the Greeks and the Romans. Why just target one particular era in history? Some would say that's the arguments of political convenience. It's a handy handle to hang your argument on.
I think you're doing a great injustice to compare slavery with any other of the historical facts that you're mentioning.
I was including other forms of slavery. No, but I was including other examples of slavery as well.
To the indignity that slavery brought to people, that is the first thing. And I'll give you an example. Coming on to your program a few moments ago, you were speaking about net zero and climate justice. We are speaking about, the world is speaking today about climate justice and compensation and how we address the issues of climate change. And this is the problem. We live in a very unjust society. You know, we condemn completely the war in Ukraine. But if you look at the mobilization of resources in the war in Ukraine, in 2 years, you have mobilized more support for Ukraine than we have mobilized for Haiti for 60 years. You have mobilized more support for Ukraine than we have mobilized for Palestine for 20 years. You have mobilized more support for Ukraine in just 1.5 years than we mobilized to address the issue of hunger in Africa for 3 years. And that is the type of unjust way we have been dealing with these crises. And we are not going to tolerate the injustice that occurred during slavery to be compared with any other system. Slavery, we all agree, was the greatest injustice ever done to human beings. So we should not ever try to compare this to any other system.
No.
There is no other system that has created greater injustice than slavery and indignity to humankind and slavery.
Well, but very briefly, coming back to where we came in, one of the points you're going to be making today is about our royal family. And you feel that it's not just about the finances involved here in terms of reparations for slavery, it's about the gestures. And you think that the British royal family should make a big gesture, don't you? What do you mean? Hand over a palace to your country?
Well, no, we don't want the British to hand over a palace that we built. You know, if you go into many of the palaces in Britain, you will see the lovely green heartwood from Guyana. You will see the sweat, tears, and blood of the slaves who were exploited.
So what do you want?
And the revenue that was earned from their exploitation. So we're not asking for a palace. We're asking for justice and a fair form of justice to the ancestors and to the greatest injustice that has ever been done.
I remember once a time, Emmanuel Macron came out and he was like lecturing African leaders of not appreciating all that they did towards Africa, where he had to speak about the gratitude that they have been doing a lot of things to help Africa. But since Africa started to rise, they forgot everything and started to reject and resist everything from France, America, and all these great, like Britain. Why? And he was like, why Africans has to do this? And he said that one day the Africans will come out, they will need their help. It will be too late. So today we are in a war. Africa is at war with West. And what is happening? The West are losing. Why are they losing? Because the power of the black, the power behind the blackness has risen. The power behind the blackness have awakened. And the God of black people is now fighting the battle of the black people. And that's why today we are watching things going in a mysterious way where we even personally feel like this is not something we expected. But again, it's happening in much way that we expected. So they fear this. During the time Africans in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Ghana were burning up the flags of France and America, Donald Trump came out and ordered for those people to be arrested and put in jail because that was a high disrespect. But I also personally feel like that was not something good. But again, why Africans had to keep on begging? Because for so long, the black people have been living a life of begging. But the people that they have been begging to, they never had even a little drop of humanity and feel sorry or feel mercy to the people or the black people. Even after all that they did during the time of slavery, colonization, up to this time, as they have been still controlling Africa and doing all these sorts of things. But why today the Europe, the West are in much fear about the rising of Africa? The fear the West has about Africa's rising today is rooted in history, economics, and geopolitics. Like resources control. Africa holds vast resources, vast reserves of critical minerals, cobalt, lithium, rare earths, oil, gas, gold, etc. And all this in Africa gains control over these resources and sells from on its own terms. Western economies could lose their cheap supply chains. End of dependency. For centuries, the West has been benefited from Africa's dependency through colonization, neo-colonial structures, debt, and aid. A rising united Africa threatens to break free from this cycle, reducing Western influence and dominance. For centuries and over decades, the Africans have living a life of dependency, believing that only the West have the authority or have the capability of coming to save Africa, because that is what they installed in African mind, that you have to sit down and wait for us to come and save you. But what matters and what was so dangerous is that for them to come and save Africans, for them to come and save any problem that arise in Africa, they were the first people who were creating these problems. They cause a problem, and behind that, they come to pretend like a savior, so that we live believing that without these people, then Africa is dead. Without Africa, without Europe, without America, without Asia, Africa is dead. And that is how people have been living, believing. So, when Africa rise up and say that we want to depend on ourselves, we want a control over our resources, we want to make our own decision on how to deal, to trade with, who to sell out our minerals, who to associate with, then it becomes a problem. Why it becomes a problem? Because this means that if Africa takes control of their own resources, then the West are going to lose. They lose power, they lose control, and they lose dominance over African countries. And when this happens, automatically, their economy shakes, their power weakens, their security and everything that they had before in Africa, it trembles, disappear. And this is what is happening today. So when you today watch over in your television from your home in Africa, the countries of France are burning. The situation in Africa, in America is worsening. The people are moving out of those countries because of the situation, the life, economy has trembled. This is not accidentally. This is a prophecy. And why this prophecy is happening today? Because those great empires were built through the sweat, through the sorrow, through the death and the blood of innocent souls. They were built through the energy and the sweat that were never paid off. They were built through the slavery. They were built illegally. So anything that you get easy, it disappeared easy. Anything that you get fast, it disappeared fast. So they build up these great empires without the appreciative, without the concerns of the black people. The blacks were the one who were taken to build up these great empires unwillingly, but forcefully. For they died crying out, singing the freedom songs. They died believing in the freedom from their coming generations. They died believing that one day the curse will come to hit and strike these great empires. Just like the Babylon fall, that's the same what is happening today in America, in Britain, and in France. Today, not only Africans are fighting against the foreigners, but they are being fought against their own people. Because today, take the situation of France. Many people, I come across my comment section just the other day when I found one comment. There is a person who was saying that all that we're presenting here is an AI. But when you go in France physically, everything is good. Nothing is happening like all this chaos and all this demonstration. My friends, I'll refer you to go deeply and find out what is happening. Try to find out the truth of all that is happening across the globe, because today the mass destructive is happening and is being witnessed from abroad. The massive destruction is being witnessed from the great empires. I'm not the one or only who is coming to do these videos. We have a lot of people who are coming up doing these kind of videos. We cannot just come out to do things which we have not confirmed. So these are the assurance of all that is happening, and we are sure of what we are talking about. Watch out, find out more, and do your research, and you will come out with the truth. So when you come out to watch all these videos, all that will have to say is to give a commentary of all that you have seen, all that you have experienced. Geopolitical competitions. With the rise of China, Russia, BRICS, and now Africa alliances like IAS in the Sahel, Africa is no longer tied to Western powers alone. This multipolar shift undermines Western geopolitical control. When African rise and some empires are falling, this is known as the shifting of power. The shifting of power, where now the oppressor have to be oppressed and the oppressed have to be the one oppressing. So during the time, the Western countries were busy fighting on how to capture Africa, how to control and exploit and everything in Africa, which they have been doing for so long. There are countries like Russia, China, India, who have been working hard every day to find a way on how to organize themselves and influence in Africa. You know, these countries never had that thought of coming to colonize Africa or decolonize Africa. They never had that thought of neo-colonization to Africa. But all that they have been doing is how to make a better relationship with the African countries, how to make all these people to benefit from each other. Because when Africa get help or need help from the countries like Asia and from like countries like Russia and China, they are not just giving out. Russians are not coming to Africa to exploit, take minerals just directly like our former colonizers. We who just came to Africa arrogantly, dictative, do all that they want because they are the superior, because they believe that nothing can happen. They're the final say. They never know that time changes. And as time goes by, everything is changing. The generation is going and new one coming. So they come up with new strategies. They came out with new thinking capacities. They came up with new demands. And that's why today you see the Africans, the Gen Zs, not only in Africa but across the globe, the Gen Zs have turned up in something else. They are not in a position of entertaining the people who are not there to help them. They are not supporting the people or the leaders who are playing around the bush. pretending like they don't know the role that brought them to the power. So when power shifts, there must some people who will lose. There must some people who will benefit. So this is normal. This is something which is normal. So, Joe, demographics of and future power. Africa has the fastest growing population and the youngest workforce in the world. By 2050, Africa will have one of the largest labor force and consumer markets, which could shift global power away from the aging West. When we say that come 2050, then everything will be completely and fully shifted. We have a lot that we are experiencing. Today, you don't have to go to school to read of all that is happening and to know all that will happen maybe in a future generation of Africa. But by just sitting down and watch over on how things are working out, you can predict how the future of Africa will be. At this time, all that is happening is that the future generation of Africa, the young force who are working so hard to make and to liberate their countries, they are doing this believing that this is the only way. Even our freedom fighters, for them to gain this independence that we today are enjoying, they had to take high risk. They had to take up the high risk, which some of them lost their life. Because if they would have not gone to the forest to fight the colonizers, I don't think if today we would have been coming here to speak because we have the freedom to speech. Many of African countries will have still living under colonization and slavery. But because they believe that this is the only way to fight and reclaim and declare of all that they want, that was the reason as to why they gained the independence, the freedom. Even though they were never given up the fully freedom and independence, but at least we can't compare the life of now today we are living to the life of our ancestors who lived under colonization. This is totally different. So by 2050, the coming generation will shift everything. And now, the world and the West powers will be the one kneeling before Africans, asking for help. Just like they have started doing this, they will be coming to ask for help. They never believed or know if something like this can come to happen until it started to happen. They started to experience. Narrative control. For years, Africa was painted as poor, unstable, and dependent. A powerful Africa destroyed his narrative, exposing how much the West actually exploited the continent for its own wealth. Today, when you ask the West about the exploitation, most of them will tell you that they never stole African resources. They never exploited Africa. But our African leaders are the one who sold out to them. We don't disagree that. The African leaders are the one giving them authority and access to our African resources. But why are they doing this? Because they have been forced to do this. Because they are still working under the gunpoint. Our African today leaders are still working as the puppets. Why are they doing this? They're not doing this willingly. But they have to do this to secure their positions, to secure their life, and to secure the life of the people they represent. Because at this time, the West still have the authority to come and exploit and distract the largest parts of Africa. They have the reasons to come today and set up the African leaders who are not cooperative to take him down and give the way to install their own puppets to lead certain countries. That's why most of the African leaders are still working under force, under the West force. But because they want to secure their position, they want to secure their life, and some of them believe that only this is the way they can secure the life of their people, not knowing that all that they are doing is more dangerous than doing all that is expected to be done. So, the West fear losing dominance, economic exploitation, political control, and cultural influence, while Africa rises with resources, youth, and global alliances that could redefine the world order. The black people are the one today expected to be coming out with the new world order. Why the new world order is supposed to be in Africa? Because Africa has everything to do to make this to happen. We have the resources, we have the manpower, we have the knowledge, we have the people who are coming out each and every day with the new inventions. And this invention, when they come out together and sit down, they will sit down and find the way on how to build up all these weapons that will make the security of Africa to be respected, to be feared. Because today, Africa cannot go in a war with America. Why? Because we have nothing to fight them. We cannot go to fight with Russia. Why? Because we have nothing to represent us in that war. But today, America cannot just go to fight Russia because they fear each other. They share the common things in weapons and everything. China, Russia, India. Most of these countries, they have the destructive weapons which make them to fear and respect one another. But they respect Africa. They respect Africa because they know that we have nothing to tell them. We have nothing to make us feel superior. That's why they're doing all this to the African countries. So enough is enough, and it's the high time now. All African leaders sit down, organize themselves, and make the best decision that will build up and secure African continent and make Africa great again. Until next time, just tell me to help the comment section. I love you and I appreciate all that you're doing, all your support, all those people who are sending me super thanks. I appreciate and love you, wherever you're reaching from. Be blessed. Until next episode, we come and do the same.